My parents gave my room to my brother's pregnant girlfriend and shoved me into the garage. After 3 years of paying for everything, I finally walked away. I thought I was doing the right thing, supporting my family through thick and thin. But what I discovered was a shocking web of deceit and exploitation that ended with them trying to move me into a literal basement, all while I was paying for everything. That's when I knew it was time to walk away. My name is Garrett, and when I was 25, I never in a million years imagined my own parents would betray me the way they did. For 3 long years, I paid for almost everything while living in their cramped, cold garage. My bedroom, my sanctuary, had been ripped away from me to make space for my brother, Jake, and his pregnant girlfriend. I still remember the absolute shock of coming home to find my belongings unceremoniously dumped in that freezing space. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs sooner. Growing up in suburban Oregon, my relationship with my parents was always solid. Mom worked part-time, Dad was a delivery driver. They were hardworking people who did their best for me and Jake. Our modest 3-bedroom house, despite financial struggles, always felt warm. I learned the value of hard work early, taking on paper routes and working through college. After getting my computer science degree, I landed a job as a software developer. Many of my friends immediately moved out, but I stayed after a conversation with my parents changed everything. Your father and I are so proud of you, Garrett, Mom said one evening, about 3 years ago. But we could really use some help with the mortgage. The interest rate went up, and with your father's back problems limiting his hours, their request wasn't unreasonable. The recession had hit them hard, Dad's injury cut his income, and medical bills were piling up. I agreed to stay, contribute to household expenses, and save for my own place. Just for a year or 2, I told myself, until they get back on their feet. We agreed I'd pay 2/3 of the mortgage and utilities, plus most of the groceries. In return, I'd keep my childhood bedroom and my independence. It seemed fair, and for a while it worked. I was building my savings while helping the people who raised me. My brother Jake was a different story. 2 years younger, he'd always been the family charmer. Where I was studious, Jake was spontaneous, charismatic, a master of minimum effort for maximum reward. After barely graduating high school, he bounced between retail jobs, never lasting more than 6 months. Jake is just finding himself, Mom would say. He lived at home, too, but his financial contribution was a paltry, inconsistent $20 here, $30 there, whenever he felt like it. He spent most weekends partying, sleeping until noon. My parents rarely called him out. Your brother is just wired differently, Dad would explain. Not everyone can be as focused as you, Garrett. Those comments stung, but I shrugged them off. I was the one with a plan, the one building a career. My goal was a down payment on a small house within 2 to 3 years. There were subtle signs of favoritism I chose to ignore. Mom making Jake's favorite meals nightly, mine only on special occasions. Dad dropping everything for Jake's car, but making me wait for help. Small things, easily dismissed, yet forming a pattern I refused to acknowledge. Still, life was stable. I had my private space, my career was advancing, and I even started a promising side project. My friend Marcus reassured me. Building a financial foundation while helping your parents is admirable. Just make sure you eventually make the move to independence. I had no idea how prophetic his warning would become, or how quickly my comfortable arrangement would transform into a nightmare of exploitation and disrespect. The first tremor hit on a Tuesday evening. Jake burst through the front door during dinner, a massive grin on his face. I have big news, he announced, helping himself to the lasagna I'd brought home. Natalie is pregnant. You're looking at a future, Dad. My fork froze. Natalie was his latest, an unstable relationship marked by drama. Barely 4 months dating. Are you serious? Mom gasped, tears of joy streaming. Dad jumped up to hug Jake. Jubilation filled the air. No one asked the obvious questions. How would Jake support a child? Where would they live? This unplanned pregnancy from my chronically unemployed brother was celebrated like a Nobel Prize. When? This is wonderful news, son, Dad beamed. Nothing more important than family. I offered. Congratulations, though with a knot of reservation in my stomach. That night, I lay awake, a deep sense of dread brewing. I never imagined how dramatically my life was about to change. 2 weeks later, I returned home from a grueling workday, exhausted. Unfamiliar shoes were scattered in the entryway, boxes cluttering the living room. "Mom, Dad," I called out, navigating the mess. Mom appeared, an odd expression on her face, guilt mixed with defensiveness. "Garrett, we need to talk," she said, gesturing to the dining table. Dad joined, avoiding my eyes. "Jake and Natalie are moving in with us," Dad announced flatly. "They need stability before the baby comes." "Okay," I said slowly, confused. "They can use the guest room, right?" The uncomfortable silence that followed sent a chill through me. "Actually," Mom continued, her voice unnaturally bright, "we think they need more space with the baby coming. They'll need room for a crib and changing table. So, we gave them your room," Dad finished, finally meeting my eyes with a challenging stare. "We moved your things to the garage. We fixed it up for you." The words hit me like a physical blow. My room, my sanctuary, given away without consultation. "You did what?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "It's already done," Mom said, patting my hand as if soothing a child. "Come see what we did with the garage. It's quite cozy." I followed them, numb, to the detached garage. Half of it was still Dad's tools and storage. The other half was hastily converted, my bed wedged against one wall, a dresser against another, a flimsy room divider. "We put in that space heater for winter," Dad said proudly, pointing to a unit that looked woefully inadequate. "And we ran an extension cord for your electronics." I stood silently, taking it all in. Concrete floor, an old rug. No closet, just a metal rack. A tiny, barred window offered minimal light. "Where's the bathroom?" I finally managed. "You'll use the downstairs half bath," Mom explained. "And you can shower in the main bathroom when Jake and Natalie aren't using it." My belongings were packed haphazardly, some photos with cracked glass. The disrespect was palpable. "You did this without asking me," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I pay most of the bills in this house." "It's only temporary," Mom insisted, though her eyes slid away. "Just until they get on their feet. Family needs to stick together." "And you're not even here most of the day," Dad added. "You're at work. They need the space more than you do." Before I could respond, laughter drifted from the house. Jake and Natalie, arms full of shopping bags, spotted us. "Oh, hey, Garrett," Jake called cheerfully. "Thanks for the room upgrade, bro." Natalie loves the extra closet space. Natalie offered a small wave, hand resting on her still flat stomach. "The nursery will look amazing once we paint." I'm thinking mint green. They disappeared inside, leaving me in my new home. The space they called a nursery had been mine hours ago. "This is wrong," I said quietly. "Don't be selfish, Garrett," Mom chided. "They're bringing a new life into this world. Your niece or nephew. Would you really put your comfort above their needs?" Put that way, any objection made me the villain. I swallowed my protests, nodded numbly, and watched my parents return to the house, satisfied. Left alone in the cold garage, surrounded by the carelessly packed remnants of my life, I experienced the first true betrayal from the people I trusted most. Life in the garage was every bit as difficult as I feared. December in Oregon meant temperatures in the 30s. The tiny space heater was no match for the drafty walls and concrete floor. I often woke up shivering, despite wearing layers. The extension cord constantly tripped. The breaker when I tried to use my computer and the heater simultaneously. Privacy vanished. The thin walls did nothing to muffle Dad's tools. The flimsy lock offered minimal security. To use the bathroom, I had to enter the main house, awkwardly interrupting family moments. But the physical discomfort paled in comparison to the financial burden. 1 month after the room reassignment, Jake lost his job. They were totally unreasonable about shift coverage, he complained. How was I supposed to know I needed to call 3 hours before my shift? Dad nodded sympathetically. 2 weeks later, Natalie quit her barista job. "The doctor says the stress isn't good for the baby," she explained, cradling her barely visible bump. With both of them unemployed, household expenses shifted dramatically onto my shoulders. Grocery bills doubled. Utility costs spiked. When the property tax bill arrived, Dad approached me in the garage. "Garrett, We're going to need a little more help this month. How much? I asked already, calculating the damage to my savings. Another $500 on top of your usual contribution. I stared at him. Dad, that means I'm paying almost 70% of all household expenses. He shrugged, unmoved. We all need to pull together right now. This is what family does. Reluctantly, I transferred the money, watching my carefully built savings erode. What was supposed to be temporary showed no signs of changing. Jake made token efforts to find work, but always found reasons why jobs were unsuitable. Natalie made herself increasingly at home, rearranging my kitchen cabinets and using my premium shower products. Seriously, Garrett, it's just shampoo. Jake snapped when I mentioned it. Do you really want my pregnant girlfriend using cheap stuff with chemicals? Personal items started disappearing from my garage. My headphones reappeared weeks later in Jake's possession. I thought you said I could borrow these, he insisted. I never said that. I countered. Well, pregnancy brain must be contagious. Because I could have sworn you did. The bathroom schedule, my agreed-upon 7 to 7:30 a.m. slot, was constantly occupied by Natalie. Morning sickness, she claimed, suspiciously timed. After 3 months of garage living, I tried to have a rational conversation about fairness. I chose a Sunday afternoon, laying out a reasonable proposal. I understand supporting family is important, I began, but I think we need to discuss a timeline for Jake and Natalie finding their own place, or at least contributing. The reaction was immediate and hostile. I can't believe how selfish you're being. Mom exclaimed. Your brother is preparing to become a father. Do you not care about your niece or nephew at all? We're trying our best, Natalie added, tears welling up on cue. Do you think I wanted to get morning sickness and lose my job? Jake slung an arm around her. Real family supports each other without keeping score, bro. I'm not keeping score, I protested. I just think there should be some balance. I'm living in a garage while paying for almost everything. The garage that we own, Dad pointed out sharply, on our property. The implication was clear. Despite my contributions, I had no standing. The conversation ended with me apologizing for upsetting Natalie. As months passed, my resentment grew alongside my financial strain. My savings goal became a distant dream. When the water heater failed, I covered the $2,000 replacement. When property insurance increased, I absorbed the difference. All while Jake and Natalie contributed nothing. The breaking point came 9 months into this arrangement when I discovered the family was planning a weekend getaway. We're thinking a nice cabin by the lake, Mom told me excitedly. Just family to enjoy our last quiet weekend before the baby comes. We need your portion of the rental fee by Wednesday. It comes to $700. My portion? I blinked. That's most of the cost, isn't it? Well, Jake and Natalie can't contribute right now. Obviously, she explained, and your father and I are covering the food and activities. Was I even included in the planning? I asked. Mom looked uncomfortable. Well, we assumed you'd be busy with work. It's really more for the expectant parents anyway. The message was deafeningly clear. My money was welcome. My presence was an afterthought. That night, alone in my cold garage, I finally acknowledged what Marcus had been telling me for months. I was not being treated like family. I was being used. Baby Sophia arrived early summer, a tiny, 6-pound bundle. The household revolved entirely around her. My parents transformed into doting grandparents, seemingly forgetting they had 2 sons, not just one. My bedroom, now a mint green nursery, became a shrine. Isn't it amazing what Jake and Natalie have created? Mom would coo giving tours. No one ever mentioned it had been my room, or that I was living in the garage, funding their comfortable family life. My living conditions deteriorated further. Sleep became a luxury. Sophia's cries pierced the thin walls. Natalie's midnight laundry runs, the washer and dryer just on the other side of my makeshift wall, made rest impossible. Babies run on their own schedule, she'd say dismissively. The financial burden grew heavier. Formula, diapers, baby clothes, doctor visits, all mysteriously added to my shopping list. My credit card balance crept upward for the first time since college. 1 year into this arrangement, my life was unrecognizable. My promising career stalled. My supervisor noticed the change. You seem distracted lately, Garrett, she commented. The quality of your code has slipped. How could I explain? I mumbled something about temporary family issues. My social life withered. Friends stopped inviting me out. Dating became impossible. How could I bring someone back to a garage bedroom? The isolation fueled a growing depression. I'd sit in my car after work, dreading going home. The dynamics grew toxic. Jake and Natalie acted as primary residents, filling the living room with baby gear, reorganizing the kitchen to accommodate baby supplies, pushing my few items to inconvenient top shelves. Family decisions were made without me, yet the costs often fell to me. When the refrigerator needed replacing, Dad and Jake picked an expensive model, then presented me with the bill. We knew you'd want the best for the family, Dad said. Jake and Natalie's attitude shifted from gratitude to entitled expectation. My financial support was an obligation. If I hesitated, I was selfish and unfeeling. Do you really want your niece drinking tap water? Natalie would ask. There could be lead in the pipes. Sophia needs these educational toys for proper development, Jake would insist, unless you want her to fall behind other kids. Every request was wrapped in guilt. Every refusal met with accusations of not caring. The weight of being the responsible one crushed me daily. The contrast between how my parents treated Jake and me became impossible to ignore. His parenting was praised lavishly despite minimal involvement. My daily contributions were expected and unremarked upon. Your brother has really matured since becoming a father, Mom commented one evening as Jake played video games. He has such a natural connection with Sophia. The unfairness burned, but I'd learned pointing it out only led to more conflict and guilt. Instead, I retreated further, working longer hours, saving what little I could in a separate, secret account. My only support was my coworker, Marcus. Over lunch, I'd confide the latest injustice. This isn't normal, Garrett, he'd tell me repeatedly. What they're doing is financial abuse. You're enabling a dysfunctional system. They're my family. I'd respond automatically. What choice do I have? The choice to value yourself, he'd say. The choice to set boundaries. The choice to walk away if those boundaries aren't respected. His words planted seeds. Could I really walk away? Was I helping them by allowing this exploitation? Or was I just postponing an inevitable collapse? As the 1-year mark of garage living stretched into 18 months, then 2 years, my dreams of home ownership faded. My savings were depleted. My career stalled. My self-esteem eroded. The family vacation, planned without me, was particularly painful. Photos of my parents, Jake, Natalie, and Sophia at a beachside resort filled our family group chat. Adventures I had helped fund, but was not invited to share. Sophia loved the ocean. Mom gushed when they returned. Scrolling through endless photos, I nodded and smiled, playing my assigned role of supportive uncle and financial provider, swallowing the hurt and resentment that threatened to choke me. That night, lying on my bed in the garage, listening to the distant sounds of my family watching a movie together, I finally acknowledged the truth Marcus had been trying to help me see. This was not a temporary situation. This was not family supporting each other. This was exploitation, plain and simple, and it would continue as long as I allowed it. After 2 years of living in the garage, funding my brother's family, I decided it was time for a direct intervention. I spent weeks preparing, gathering financial records, creating spreadsheets, outlining a reasonable plan for Jake and Natalie's transition to independence. I practiced what I'd say, framing everything in terms of Sophia's future stability. I chose a Sunday afternoon when Sophia was napping, asking everyone to gather in the living room for an important family discussion. I even had professional handouts. Thank you all for sitting down with me. I began, handing out the folders. I wanted to talk about our living and financial arrangements. Dad immediately frowned at the spreadsheet of household expenses. Mom flipped nervously. Jake didn't even open his, leaning back defensively. Natalie took one glance and slid hers onto the coffee table. I have been supporting this household at unsustainable levels. I continued carefully. Currently, I'm covering 78% of all expenses while living in a converted garage. This arrangement was presented as temporary, but we are now 2 years in with no plan for change. Are you saying we're not grateful? Mom Interrupted, her voice tight. Because we appreciate everything you do, Garrett. This isn't about gratitude, I clarified. It's about creating a sustainable situation for everyone. Which is why I've created this 3-phase plan to help Jake and Natalie transition to financial independence. I directed them to the page outlining a gradual 6-month process. Phase 1 involves both of you finding at least part-time employment. I've researched several options that would work around Sophia's schedule, including remote positions. So, you want Natalie to abandon our daughter to strangers? Jake interjected, his tone confrontational. Not at all. There are many affordable, high-quality childcare options. I've included information on 3 centers near us. Daycare centers are breeding grounds for illness. Natalie objected. Sophia would be sick constantly. Studies actually show early socialization strengthens the immune system, I countered. But more importantly, this plan would allow you both to start building careers and financial independence, which is better for Sophia long-term. I can't believe you're trying to dictate how we raise our child. Jake shouted. Since when are you the parenting expert? You don't even have kids. Dad raised a hand to quiet Jake. Garrett, while I appreciate the effort, you have to understand that Jake and Natalie have a child to raise. That's their primary responsibility right now. I understand that, I said, frustration building, but parenthood doesn't absolve people of financial responsibility. Most parents work and raise children simultaneously. We are not most parents, Natalie declared. We believe Sophia needs full-time parental attention during these formative years. Then perhaps you should be the ones financing that choice, I suggested, trying to keep my voice level. Right now, I'm effectively subsidizing your parenting philosophy while living in a garage. Jake stood up suddenly. This is such bull. You think because you have some corporate job, you can come in here and tell us how to live? Not everyone measures success by a paycheck, bro. Some of us value family over money. The implication that I didn't value family stung deeply. This isn't about money versus family. It's about fairness and respect. I have put my life on hold for 2 years to support all of you. No one asked you to do that, Jake shouted. You offered to help the family out, and now you're throwing it in our faces like we owe you something. You do owe me something, I responded, my careful composure finally cracking. You owe me basic respect and consideration. You owe me acknowledgement of the sacrifices I've made. And yes, you owe me a plan for how this situation changes going forward. Natalie began to cry on. Hugh, I can't believe you're attacking us like this. We're just trying to do what's best for our daughter. Mom immediately moved to comfort her. It's okay, sweetheart. Garrett doesn't understand the pressures of parenthood. This is not about parenthood, I insisted. This is about basic fairness. I am living in a garage while paying for most of the household expenses. How is that reasonable? Dad stood up, his expression stern. That is enough, Garrett. I will not have you upsetting Natalie in her condition. Her condition? I asked, confused. What condition? A moment of awkward silence. Natalie placed a protective hand over her stomach. We're going to announce it this weekend. I'm pregnant again. The news hit me like a physical blow. Another child. More expenses. More justifications for Jake and Natalie to avoid responsibility. More reasons why my needs would always be secondary. Congratulations, I managed to say, the word tasting bitter. But this actually makes my point more urgent. How do you plan to support 2 children? The same way we support one, Jake replied smugly. As a family. You mean with my money? I clarified. See, this is why Jake will always be more family-oriented than you, Dad said, the casual cruelty of his words striking deep. He understands that family is about supporting each other, not keeping ledgers and demanding payback. I looked around the room at the faces of people I had sacrificed so much for, and saw nothing but entitlement and dismissal. My carefully prepared intervention had failed completely. They had rejected my reasonable proposal and somehow transformed me into the villain for even suggesting it. I think we are done here, I said quietly, gathering my unused presentation materials. No one disagreed. I walked out to my garage home, the weight of futility pressing down on me. Later that evening, I called Marcus. They're never going to change, are they? I asked, the realization both painful and liberating. No, he said gently, because they don't have to. You've created a situation where their behavior has no consequences. They have no incentive to change as long as you continue enabling them. So what do I do? You know what you need to do, Garrett. You just haven't been ready to admit it to yourself. He was right. The path forward was becoming terrifyingly clear. Walking away from family seemed unthinkable, a betrayal of everything I'd been raised to believe. But staying was slowly destroying me, financially, emotionally, psychologically. That night, I made a list of everything I had sacrificed over the past 2 years: my savings, my career advancement, my social life, my independence, my self-respect. Then I made a second list of what I had received in return: a cold garage, constant guilt trips, and the privilege of funding a lifestyle I wasn't permitted to share. The imbalance was stark and undeniable, and with a second child on the way, the situation would only worsen. It was time to start planning my exit, quietly and carefully, before I lost everything, including myself. As Jake and Natalie's second pregnancy progressed, the entitlement in the house grew even stronger. 3 years had now passed since I had been relegated to the garage. 3 years of paying the majority of household expenses while being treated as an afterthought. One evening, Mom and Dad asked me to join them at the dining table. Jake and Natalie were out shopping for baby items, presumably on my dime. We need to discuss living arrangements, Dad began, his tone falsely casual. With another baby coming, Jake and Natalie will need more space. I looked. Between them, a cold dread building. What are you suggesting? Mom reached across to pat my hand. We've been thinking that the basement might be a better space for you. We could clear out the storage area and set up your bed down there. I stared at them, speechless. The basement was a damp, windowless space with exposed pipes and occasional flooding. It was used for storage, precisely because it was uninhabitable. You want me to move from the garage to the basement? I clarified, certain I must have misunderstood. Jake thought it might work well, Dad continued. That way they could use the garage as a play area for Sophia and the new baby. Kids need space. The casual way they discussed downgrading my already substandard living conditions, while expecting me to continue financing the household, struck me as surreal. 3 years of sacrifice had not earned me even the most basic consideration. Have either of you been in the basement recently? I asked. It has mold issues, and the ceiling is too low for me to stand upright. We'd clean it up, of course, Mom assured me, missing the point entirely. Maybe put down some carpet remnants. I shook my head, finally reaching my limit. No, I am not moving to the basement. If anything, after 3 years of paying most of the bills, I should be moving back into an actual bedroom in the house. Their expressions shifted from expectant to affronted, as if my refusal was both unexpected and unreasonable. Garrett, you need to think about what's best for the children, Mom chided. They are the future of this family. And what about my future? I asked quietly. Does that matter to either of you at all? An uncomfortable silence followed, providing all the answer I needed. In that moment, a decision crystallized within me. I would not be moving to the basement. I would be moving out entirely, cutting the financial umbilical cord that had allowed this dysfunctional situation to persist. Before I could verbalize this resolution, however, another discovery pushed me firmly over the edge. While searching for a tax document in Dad's home office, I came across loan paperwork I had never seen before. My parents had taken out a second mortgage on the house 6 months earlier, borrowing $30,000 against their equity to provide Jake with startup capital for an online sneaker business he'd never even mentioned to me. The business had failed within 3 months, the money gone, nothing to show for it. The house I was helping pay for was now collateral. That evening, I confronted my parents about the hidden loan. Their response was defensive and dismissive. Jake needed a chance to build something for his family, Dad explained. Not everyone can walk into a cushy tech job like you did. Cushy, I repeated, incredulous. I worked through college and earned my degree while Jake was partying. I started at entry level and worked my way up. And now I am financing this entire household while living in a garage. Here we go with the scorekeeping again, Mom sighed. Real family doesn't keep track of who pays what. Except you do keep score, I pointed out. You constantly remind me of my obligations, while never holding Jake to any standard at all. And now you've put the house at risk without even consulting me, despite the fact that I pay most of the mortgage. It's still our house, Dad stated firmly. You live here rent-free. The statement was so divorced from reality that I actually laughed. Rent-free? I pay over $2,000 monthly toward the mortgage and utilities. I buy most of the groceries. I paid for the new water heater, the refrigerator, and countless other expenses. In what universe is that rent-free? Well, if you're so unhappy with the arrangement, maybe you should find your own place, Mom suggested, clearly not expecting me to agree. You know what? You are absolutely right. I should. Their expressions changed from defensive to alarmed as they realized I was serious. Now, Garrett, don't be hasty, Dad backpedaled. We can discuss the basement situation further. This is not about the basement, I said, my voice steady with newfound resolve. This is about 3 years of being taken advantage of while being made to feel selfish for having basic needs and expectations. I am done. I walked away from that conversation with a weight lifted from my shoulders. The decision had been made. Now I needed to execute it carefully and completely. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly put my plan into action. I secured a 1-bedroom apartment across town, signing the lease. During my lunch break, I opened a new bank account and began transferring my funds. I created a detailed inventory of my possessions. I arranged for a moving truck for the following Saturday, scheduling it when I knew everyone would be home. This was not going to be a quiet exit. It needed to be clear and unambiguous. When the truck pulled up outside our house that Saturday morning, the family was gathered in the living room. Sophia was playing, Jake and Natalie discussing baby names, my parents offering suggestions. The domestic scene might have appeared wholesome to an outsider. What is that truck doing here? Dad asked as I walked through with an empty box. I'm moving out, I replied simply. Today. The announcement created immediate chaos. Mom began to cry. Dad demanded explanations. Jake looked stunned. Natalie quickly gathered Sophia. You can't just leave. Mom protested. What about the mortgage payment due next week? What about the property taxes coming up? The fact that her first concern was financial rather than emotional spoke volumes. I have paid my last contribution to this household, I stated calmly. From now on, the 4 adults living here will need to figure out how to support yourselves. This is about the basement, isn't it? Dad asked. We can work something else out. Maybe convert the dining room for you instead. This is not about where I sleep, I explained. This is about being valued and respected as a member of this family, which I have not been for a very long time. Jake finally found his voice. So, you're just going to abandon your family when we need you most, with a baby on the way? I am not abandoning anyone, I said. I am choosing to stop enabling a situation that is unhealthy for everyone, including Sophia and your unborn child. Children need to see adults modeling responsibility and mutual respect, not exploitation and entitlement. We never exploited you, Mom insisted. We gave you a place to live. In the garage, I reminded her, while I paid most of the bills. That is the definition of exploitation. As the movers began loading my furniture and boxes, the reality of the situation finally seemed to dawn on my family. Without my financial contribution, their comfortable lifestyle would immediately become unsustainable. The panic in their expressions confirmed what I had suspected. They had never prepared for this possibility. You can't do this to us, Dad said, his anger barely contained. After everything we have done for you, what exactly have you done for me these past 3 years? I asked quietly. Besides take advantage of my sense of obligation and make me feel selfish for having basic needs. He had no answer. As the last of my possessions were loaded, I handed my parents an envelope containing information, the date of my final contribution, the account numbers for utilities I would no longer be paying, and the name of an affordable financial counselor I had researched for them. I'm not doing this to hurt you, I told them sincerely. I'm doing this because it's necessary. For me, and ultimately, for all of you. Jake and Natalie need to learn financial independence. You need to establish realistic expectations about retirement. And I need to start living my own life. I knelt down to say goodbye to Sophia, who at 2.5 years old probably wouldn't Remember me as the uncle who had sacrificed so much for her comfort. Be good, kiddo. I'll see you soon. As I walked toward my car, Jake followed me out. You'll regret this, he said, his voice shaking with anger and perhaps fear. When you need family someday, remember this moment. I turned to face him one last time. I have needed family for the past 3 years, Jake. I needed respect, consideration, and reciprocity. I never received any of those things. That is what I will remember. With those words, I drove away from the house that had become a prison of obligation toward a future that, while uncertain, was finally my own to shape. The first night in my new apartment was surreal. The space was modest, a one-bedroom unit in a quiet complex. Nothing luxurious, but entirely mine. I sat on my bed, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and listened to the unfamiliar silence. No Sophia crying, no Jake and Natalie arguing, no parents making decisions about my life without consulting me. Just peace. Beautiful and unfamiliar. My phone had been buzzing constantly since my departure. Mom's tearful pleas, Dad's angry demands, Jake's alternating threats and guilt trips. I silenced the notifications, needing space to process the magnitude of the change. The financial implications were significant. My monthly expenses were considerably lower. Without supporting 5 people, but I had depleted much of my savings. My retirement contributions had been minimal, and my career advancement had stalled. I was essentially starting over at 28, far behind where I should have been. Yet, despite these challenges, I felt lighter than I had in years. The freedom to make my own decisions, to prioritize my own needs without guilt, was worth every penny of financial setback. The fallout from my departure was swift and predictable. 3 days after I moved out, Mom called in tears. The mortgage payment is due tomorrow, she sobbed. We don't have enough to cover it. I'm sorry to hear that, I responded calmly. You might want to call the bank and discuss payment options. But you always handle this, she protested. We are counting on you. Not anymore, I said gently but firmly. This is exactly the kind of dependency I cannot support any longer. Similar calls followed about utility bills, grocery money, and unexpected expenses. Each time, I maintained the same boundary. I would no longer be the financial solution to their problems. 2 weeks after my departure, Dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. His expression was a mixture of anger and desperation. This has gone on long enough, he declared when I opened the door. Your mother is beside herself with worry. Jake and Natalie can't make ends meet. You need to come back and fulfill your responsibilities to this family. I invited him in, offered him coffee, and calmly explained that I would not be returning. My responsibility to myself has to come first now, I told him. For years, I neglected my own needs to meet everyone else's. That period of my life is over. So that's it. You just abandon your family when things get tough, he demanded. I supported this family financially for 3 years while living in a garage, I reminded him. I didn't leave when things got tough. I left when I realized the situation was never going to change unless I forced it to. He left, angry and disappointed, unable to see beyond his perception of me as selfish and uncaring. It would take months before any member of my family began to understand the legitimacy of my position. In the meantime, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into work, earning a promotion within 4 months. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones gradually, expanding my social circle beyond just Marcus, who remained a steadfast supporter. I started dating again, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as I reclaimed my sense of self-worth. I also began seeing a therapist, working through the complex emotions surrounding my family situation. The guilt that had been my constant companion for years slowly began to dissolve as I gained perspective on the dysfunctional dynamics I had escaped. What you experienced was a form of financial abuse, my therapist explained. Your family systematically exploited your sense of obligation while disregarding your needs. Walking away was not only reasonable but necessary for your well-being. 6 months after my departure, I received a text from Jake that surprised me. Can we talk? Just the two of us. We met at a coffee shop. Jake looked different, older and more subdued. The trademark cockiness had diminished, replaced by something approaching humility. Things have been hard since you left, he admitted after awkward small talk. Dad had to come out of retirement too. Work part-time. Mom is looking for jobs too. Natalie and I both had to find work and daycare. Costs are killing us. That sounds challenging, I acknowledged, neither gloating nor apologizing. I didn't understand before, he continued, staring into his coffee. How much you were carrying for all of us. It was easier not to see it, to believe we deserved your help without giving anything back. It was the closest thing to an apology I expected, and I accepted it as such. What are you going to do now? I asked. What we should have done years ago, he said. Grow up, take responsibility. Natalie and I are looking for our own place. Something we can actually afford. We both have entry-level jobs. Nothing great, but it's a start. Our relationship began to heal slowly after that conversation, not back to what it had been, but towards something potentially healthier, based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. My parents took longer to come around. Dad maintained his position that I had betrayed the family. Mom wavered between guilt trips and tentative acknowledgments that perhaps the situation had been unfair to me. I maintained firm boundaries with both of them, limiting contact and refusing to be drawn into financial discussions. A year after moving out, I invited them to my apartment for dinner, a neutral meeting on my terms. They came, still uncomfortable with our new dynamic, but making an effort. The conversation was strained but civil. When Mom commented on how nice my place was, I detected a note of genuine happiness for me beneath her wistfulness. You seem different, Dad observed as they were leaving. More confident. I agreed. Taking care of myself has allowed me to become the person I was meant to be instead of just the family. ATM. He winced at the characterization, but did not dispute it. The journey toward healthy relationships with my family continues, with progress and setbacks. I maintain clear boundaries about money, refusing to slip back into the role of financial savior. Sometimes this creates tension, but I no longer feel guilty for protecting myself. The most profound lesson I learned was that genuine love requires respect and reciprocity. Supporting others should not come at the cost of your own well-being. Sometimes the most caring thing you can do, both for yourself and for those who have become dependent on you, is to step back and allow natural consequences to occur. I also learned that taking care of yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. Like the airline safety demonstration says, you must secure your own oxygen mask before helping others. By depleting myself to support my family's dysfunction, I was not helping any of us grow or thrive. Today, 3 years after walking away, my life is unrecognizable. I've been promoted twice at work. I have a healthy savings account again, and I'm back on track with retirement planning. I recently put a down payment on a small townhouse, achieving the goal that had been derailed by years of exploitation. My relationship with my family has evolved into something more balanced. Jake and Natalie now live in their own apartment with their 2 children. They struggle financially, but are learning to manage independently. My parents had to downsize to a smaller home, but have adjusted to their new reality. We gather occasionally for family events, and I enjoy being Uncle Garrett to Sophia and her brother without the weight of resentment that once colored every interaction. I contribute to birthday and Christmas gifts, but my financial involvement stops there, a boundary that everyone now understands and respects. Walking away was the hardest decision I ever made, but also the most necessary. It allowed me to reclaim my life and, ironically, made it possible for genuine family relationships to eventually develop, not based on obligation or exploitation, but on mutual respect and care. If you find yourself in a similar situation, trapped in a cycle of giving that depletes you while being taken for granted, know that setting boundaries is not selfish. It is essential. True love does not demand self-sacrifice to the point of self-destruction. Sometimes the bravest, most loving thing you can do is walk away.